Hello and welcome to the Boot Room podcast. Before I bring the two ravishing looking lads in, I just want to do a special shout out to a friend of myself and Jimmy's, our good friend Dave. He's gone through an operation over the weekend. So we just wanted to start the podcast by saying, Dave, I hope you're keeping well, mate. I'm sure you'll be back on your feet in no time. Sending lots of love from me and the lads. Jimmy, Tank, how are we, lads? You well?
Very well, thanks,
Yeah,
mate.
very well, mate. And get well soon, Dave.
Good man, Jim. Good man. Lads, there was a lot of football at the weekend. There was a lot of talking points. We always tend to start with Liverpool. I'm very aware that me and Tank are big Liverpool fans. I try to be as non-rose tinted glasses as I can. Tank doesn't. Do you, Tank? I think it's fair to say we are
No.
Liverpool through and through. Jimmy is going to be the voice of reason today. So you got the unenviable task of that, Jim. How are you feeling about that, mate?
Mate, not the best, to be fair. I just tweeted earlier, coming on with you two. I'm just going to be throwing bombs in left, right, and centre.
I love it, mate. The Simon Cowell of the Boot Room podcast, Jim. Yeah.
Just Piers Morgan just saying things just to be an idiot.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now we'll start with the cup final because obviously it was a massive game in what's turning out to be a massive season. And for Liverpool, it was a massive game for Chelsea off the back of the Carabao Cup disappointments. Tank, I'll come to you first because as it was the 150th anniversary of the FA Cup. You've both played in this competition as players. What has the FA Cup meant to you over the years, Tank? I know if you're anything like me, growing up watching it as a kid was a particular highlight.
No, I used to love the FA Cup. I mean, I think it's lost a bit of its sting at the minute because the way the Premier League and the Champions League. But I mean, I loved playing it. It always seemed to fall on my birthday when I was a player as well, so I loved it. But yeah, I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's starting to get a little bit of its glam back for me.
I'd agree with that.
Do you think that's down to clubs? Obviously, now it seems like big clubs are nearly prioritising it. Obviously, you'll have the big boys who can field two squads, but you're still getting to see top world class players playing in the tournament, which is ultimately what paying fans want to see.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like, and this is not like, as we're talking about the Liverpool and Man City, but you like the likes of your Chelsea because the league is that Liverpool and Man City are so far ahead of other teams in the league that I think the FA Cup's now becoming like, your Man Uniteds and your Chelseas. It's kind of like a focal point, a chance to win a trophy. That's just, and that's sad to say, that's not Liverpool goggles on, but Liverpool and City are so far ahead in the league that big clubs must be now saying, well, the FA Cup is like, it's kind of a priority now. And I think the last 3 or 4 years, it's got its mojo back, the FA Cup.
Was there a particular game that stood out for you, Tank, that you enjoyed?
This season or the FA in all?
Yeah, as a player, is there any particular memories that you've got that you look back and think, yeah, that was a good one?
I always loved the cup final, even as a kid. When Rush smashed the cameras, Chester against Everton. It's always stuck with me. I just love that game. He smashes the camera, and you don't actually know whether the cameras fall over. That's the only thing that's always bothered me.
the wonderful world of Tank's mind and how it works. Jim, I suppose our experiences of players in the FA Cup has probably been a little bit different. It nearly felt, I suppose, as semi-pro players, a whole season could be based around a good cup run for the sustainability of a club. What's the tournament meant to you over the years as both a fan and a player?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Tank said, I think it lost its mojo, didn't it, around the mid-2000s, 2010, and I agree that it's definitely coming back. And, seeing non-league clubs thrive in it, and I only made it to the first round and never got off the bench. So, I played in the prelims, but never in the first round proper. But, when you're seeing people like Kidderminster Harriers coming up against West Ham this season and losing on the last kick of the game in extra time, they're the games that I think have given it a mojo back, and actually probably dies down more towards the final. I think once the big clubs are back,
the usual suspects are still in
there. Yeah, your Chelseas, your Liverpools, your Man Cities. But when I think a lower-rated team gets to the semi-finals final, I think there's that FA Cup story that people grab onto, don't they? And it has that and it has that emphasis back on it. Yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, from a non-league point of view, getting to the first round is big prize money. You know, you're talking millions if they get on telly, especially if they can get through to the third round and get someone. So yeah, it's still a brilliant competition, and I'd put the League Cup in there as well, Alan. Now, to be fair, with clubs wanting to win that because Premier League's pretty much sewn up between Liverpool and Man City each year now, and I can't believe it's been 12 years since Liverpool won the FA Cup. That's a mad stat.
Oh, he started already. There you go. Little bit of needle, Jim. I like it, mate.
No, I'm not saying that. Surely that's a long time for a club like Liverpool to have gone without the FA Cup. I didn't even know that until I heard him say it. That's crazy for me.
Yeah, to be honest, like if you take a step back, I think it's probably been a consequence of Liverpool not being able to compete on all fronts. They've not had a squad to be able to do it, and Klopp has nearly had to prioritise League and Champions League. And I'd say if you ask him after this season, given how his players are dropping like flies at the moment, I'm not sure he'll go after all four again. But Tank, in terms of the game itself, given the volume of games that both clubs have played, because you forget Chelsea have obviously got deep in all of the cup competitions that they've entered. They had the World Club Cup, if my memory serves me right, that they had to navigate as well. Liverpool are fighting on four fronts still. The volume of games, and to play a game of this magnitude and then it go into extra time. I have to say, over the 90 minutes, I would say I was really impressed with the standard that both teams were able to roll out.
This lucky, as you say, Chelsea's probably played more games than Liverpool this season when you consider where they've been. But the only thing with Liverpool is every game is a must-win game for Liverpool. Like the City and Liverpool of the standards are that high. Like a draw is an absolute disaster. Where Chelsea can kind of rotate. They're not going to win the league. They're kind of done and dusted for top four. But you kind of do forget how many games they have played as well. Chelsea's had a tough haul. I think Chelsea's squad's outstanding as well, by the way. They should be a lot closer to City and Liverpool for me for the squad, the money they've spent. I mean, you look at their bench, you think, Jesus, some of the players they've got, especially in the attacking areas, it's absolutely phenomenal. But as a game, was it ever going to be any different to the Carabao Cup, really? It was always going to be tight, intense. I just feel and this is watching Liverpool in the Cup and in the game against Tottenham as well. I think Liverpool players are looking really tired at the minute. And I think it's kind of shit or bust for the first 30 minutes. It's like all out attack. They're everywhere. They're closing down. They're hunting in packs. And if you don't score that early goal, it's kind of like we might have to sit back and absorb it and just try and pick a win somewhere. I do think the season's taken its toll on Liverpool.
Would you agree, Jim? How did you get a read on the game?
I'll be deadly honest with you, mate. I was bored.
Really?
Yeah, I was really bored. I was bored watching it. I think Tank just hit the nail on the head there. For the first 15 minutes, I think it was frantic. And then I think both teams, I think the sun didn't help. It was a hot day. And then
sounded like Jurgen Klopp here, Jim, talking about the weather.
I know, but to be fair though, mate, when I get that players grow up in different climates, but when you're used to playing in the cold and rain, and then one day the sun's out and you're in it, it affects you. We've all played in it, and I hate playing in the sun. I'd play in the wet and wind all day as opposed to sun. So I think that affected the game. But up until from 15 minutes till maybe. I mean, you had a couple of chances. Trent should have scored. Robertson should have scored, sorry. Other than that, I was bored. Yeah. I thought it was a poor game. I did. From a neutral point of view. I wasn't invested in it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a strange one because I suppose when you're emotionally attached to a game, you probably get a different read on it. And I kind of felt maybe, like you said, first 15 minutes, I think Luis Diaz, we're big fans of him on this podcast. He looked really dangerous, and Liverpool, like Tank said, looked to blow Chelsea away. But then once they realised that wasn't going to happen, I think Chelsea looked quite dangerous. They clearly looked to go long diagonally and try and double up on Liverpool's fullbacks on the breakaway, which I thought worked quite well for them. And then when you get to, it nearly felt like Liverpool had tried to go all in to get the win in the 90, and they could have done towards the end. And then as soon as we got into extra time, it just felt like all the players' legs fell off. And Tank, from a spectacle point of view, like Jim's watching it there as an albeit neutral, and he's pretty much said that he's bored there watching the game. Are we reaching that point where we're flogging players to the point where they've got very little left in the tank, that the actual spectacle itself is suffering?
I do, yeah. I mean, I watched Jurgen Klopp's interview today, and he's bang on, and he gets a little bit of criticism from other managers, but he was saying today he's the only one who's like actually using common sense here. He's like, why are we playing Tuesday? Why are we playing Tuesday after the cup final with 120 minutes penalties? We don't get back to Liverpool till God knows what time. You've had one training session and you've got a game tomorrow, sorry. And he was like, where's the common sense of where we just go, I'll tell you what, we play on Thursday. He was like, I'd rather give the players that extra 2 days rest, play Thursday, and then get ready for the game Sunday for the last game of the season. And we've spoken this on the last podcast, Jamie, or 2 podcasts ago, where we're kind of like, we're downgrading the product just so we get more football on the television. It's like how many games? Yeah, we're trying to get, like, you've got Arsenal on the telly tonight, then you've got Liverpool, then there's games Wednesday. And it's like these broadcasters are like, let's get as many games on the telly as we possibly can to get as much subscriptions in as we possibly can, and like kind of fuck the players. I mean, the last 10 minutes of that extra time, I actually felt sorry for the.
It's like an over 35s game.
Oh, mate! Listen, you were like, there was a stage. I can't remember who it was. It was a Liverpool player who was running for the ball. I was like, he's absolutely. He can't even raise his legs to go and get the ball for the throwing. Yeah, you're like the out on the feet, and then we're asking Liverpool now to go. And this is nothing to do with Liverpool. City's gone through the same, and Chelsea. We're asking Liverpool now to go away to Southampton, which is a long way from Liverpool, to win a game, and us fans would be sitting there and they'd be like, well, Liverpool were rubbish tonight, weren't they? Well, they're dead on the feet.
Yeah. Is it any wonder? I want to touch on something that there was an interesting debate today, probably born out of the fact that, Chelsea have been, albeit lucky, maybe unlucky, sorry, I should say, over the two cup finals, in that there wasn't much to separate the teams over a long period of time. And they've been on the I suppose, the receiving end of 2 penalty defeats. When it comes to the lottery of pens, Jim, you've got to feel for Chelsea. Or do you think that this, I mean, there's news breaking at the moment that Liverpool have been doing a lot of work with a company called Neuro 11, which is looking at, I suppose, the psychological side of penalties. And this has been something that they've been working on for a while. It seems to me like Liverpool are prepared to go that extra yard in terms of looking for those marginal gains. I think they employed a throwing coach, which people look to mock. Liverpool have been working, obviously, with this external company on penalties. Where do you stand on the lottery of penalties? Do you think shootouts are more about skill? Could it be this element of strategy that Liverpool have looked to adopt? Do you think it's mentality, luck? Where do you kind of sit on that spectrum?
I mean, it's a difficult one. Obviously, you would aim towards more skill, because in the same with anything, with repetition, it becomes second nature. So if I'm a Premiership player and I know I'm going to take penalties, I'd want to take 100, and I'd want to take it in the same spot and exactly the same way, just to get my body used to hitting that penalty. And then in the match, I would just pick that spot no matter what and do exactly the same. Now, I've made that choice. If the keeper saves it, he's guessed the right way. That's the luck part coming into it, isn't it? From a goalkeeper point of view. But from a taker's point of view, I think if you have that repetition of having to know where you practice to get them penalties, then it should just become second nature. And that's where you would assume the more skilled penalty takers practice more, as opposed to the ones who don't take penalties and then have to come in 6, 7, 8, and they're the ones that you usually miss. Hence Kepa, League, Cup, not a penalty taker, blast it over. So I'll be aiming for more skill, but I think luck comes apart from a goalkeeping save point of view.
It's funny, when you were saying that about the practice, the repetition, I just kept thinking Harry Kane. When I see him take a penalty, you can just see that is practiced, like the connection there's a little bit of variety. He's always hitting the side netting as well. So like you said, Jim, even if the keeper guesses the right way, it actually doesn't matter because he trusts his connection with the ball that much.
And he's probably hit that penalty 100, 200 times, and he just knows that where from the start of his run up, he knows his little stutters, he knows where his foot's going to land, he knows exactly where he's going to hit that ball, and he knows exactly where it's going to be. And that doesn't mean that every single penalty goes the same way, because the keeper would just stand there. But when you come into that time, he'll practice one way, he'll practice the other way, so then he can change his mind at that point. But it's at that point that he needs to make his mind up and stick to it. Because when you decide to change, that is when all bets are out the window. Trust me, I know.
Have you ever been in one of those situations where, like, if you took a penalty in a packed stadium that was in a shootout, or like, I'm just trying to get a sense, I suppose, of the pressure, because even if you're playing in front of the dog and duck, and you've got to make that walk, it's still pressure, you still don't want to miss, but I'm guessing it's magnified, 100 times over when you 30,000, 50,000 people screaming.
Yeah, I missed one actually against Doncaster in the League Cup. For Forest, we were playing, and
was it in a shootout or in a game?
No, it was in a shootout.
Yeah.
And Harry Bassett, like, I was only a kid, so obviously I played all the games. So we rested all of the senior players because we were going for the league title to get promoted back to the Premier League. So we played Doncaster on a Tuesday night, like full house, and we rested a lot of players. And I hit one post and went across the line and hit the other post and missed it. It's just a horrible, and the press is horrible. Oh. But just talking about like penalties, I play with Pierre Van Hooydonk, and you talk about repetition. There's free kicks and there's penalties. Every day after training, he'd have 2 bags of balls and he'd just hit free kicks into an empty net. And his penalties were just, you could have 3 goalkeepers in and he couldn't get, when he connected and got it right, you could not save one of Pierre Van Hooydonk's penalties. And I thought Harry Redknapp's penalty against Burnley the other day was just like, it was one of them. For me, it was like, it doesn't matter who's in goal. It's like, you are not saving that penalty under no
Harry
circumstances.
Redknapp came out of retirement, mate.
Harry Redknapp, Harry Kane's penalty against Burnley the other day was just like, I was sat here and I was like, fucking hell.
Do you?
No, it's like, because it's on the floor as well. It's right in the corner, and the pace and the power, you're like, that's not by accident. That's just not luck. That is repetition. That's practice to make it perfect.
Yeah, when you say there about Van Hooydonk, he wouldn't change then in the game? You know what I mean? It would be the same approach. Do you know what I mean? Nothing would change.
No, Pierre, just like, he's typical Dutch fella, Pierre. Like, he's got so much confidence and like bordering on arrogance.
Yeah.
But I mean, that season for us, I think he scored about 34 goals, and we used to get a free kick 30 yards out, and we would like, he'll score now. And honestly, I'd say from long distance free kick, 6 out of 10, they were goals. He just had, but his penalties were just absolutely ridiculous. There's no chance you could save them.
There was another topic that's been causing a little bit of a stir online, and I could see it coming a mile off. And I'm going to stay with you just on this one, Tank, with obviously the Liverpool connection. The national anthem. It's been getting a fair bit of headlines. Liverpool. This is not something new for Liverpool fans in booing the national anthem. I have my own interpretation of it, which I'm happy to give in a minute. It's caused quite the reaction from the national press, other fans, and they're condemning Liverpool fans. They don't understand it. Jurgen Klopp had to answer some questions on it today in his press conference, and I appreciated his response where he said, well, maybe you have to ask, why are they doing that? That's the question you need to answer, or certainly ask. Where do you stand on this, Tank, as a proud Liverpoolian?
It goes back to, everyone knows where it goes back to the history, and any Liverpool fan or Liverpool person has grievances with the government and what goes on in the national anthems and all that. So I've never booed it, but am I bothered about Liverpool fans booing it? Not really, no. It is what it is. People don't understand what's been going on in the past and previous years, long times ago. So, I'm not into I can't stand politics. I got banned for calling Boris Johnson a cunt because he is a cunt. And my political views are, if Liverpool fans really want to boo the national anthem, get over it.
Yeah. And I suppose for those that don't understand, I guess, Liverpool have a long running kind of dispute, I guess, more with the establishment, I think is fair to say. They feel like they've been repeatedly let down as a city. It's fundamentally, I think it's fair to say, a socialist city. So the idea of royals in their existence probably doesn't sit particularly right. Neither does God Save the Queen as a national anthem. But then when you think of the other side of it, where across the country, Liverpool has been mocked openly by other people, by other fans, for poverty, for Hillsborough. There's been peddled lies of that tragedy, which have been, I suppose, made up as part of an establishment cover-up, for that tragedy. I think it's fair game that Liverpool fans don't feel particularly connected to the wider country. And let's be honest, the wider country left Liverpool for dead as part of the word managed decline. So they very much see themselves as separate and certainly don't resonate towards, I suppose, that banner of being English and the Queen. I suppose, Jim, this is where you come in with your neutral hat on.
And it's a hard one for me because I don't want to say and go like, oh, they were wrong, because they weren't wrong. Whatever you feel is what you feel, and I can't tell you whether that's right or wrong. And I'm very much with Tank on this government, and I'm very much a product of a working class family who's done all right for himself. But I'm a Labour voter. I'm happy to say that on the podcast. I'm not a fan of the Conservative government.
If you'd have casually dropped in there that you were a Conservative, that would have been
Imagine later, lads.
How long have I known you? You've just dropped that in. To be fair, you look a bit like a Conservative.
I know, Tory boy and all that.
Tory boy,
yeah. No, I'm not, mate. Far from it. But back to the national anthem. Like, I can understand why they boo it, and I could understand where they're coming from. Have I got anything against the Queen? No, not really. Should she be there? Probably not. But it doesn't affect me in any way. So would I have done it? I wouldn't have booed the national anthem. I wouldn't have sang it. So it's anyone's personal choice, and I'm never here to say whether someone should or shouldn't do what they feel is right, because that's what they felt at the time.
That's, by the way, we navigated that one particularly well, considering that was a minefield. And when Tank turned around and went, my political views are, and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, where is this one going here?
I've actually taken that down, but I actually like the Queen. I think the old girl is, she makes me laugh. She's a good old girl. I can't stand the government and stuff like that. I think this Conservative government is the most corrupt government on the planet. I mean, how can you have a Prime Minister who's actually broke the law for the first time in the history of politics? Yeah, he's still swan-songing away, our Bojo. But let's not get into politics. It's a football podcast.
We were doing well, lads. We were doing well.
Yeah, so we'll be on marriage next, but
agony. It becomes an agony and podcast.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but I want to bring something back to the penalties, because I got out of the shower today and I was thinking, bloody hell, penalties is old. That's an old tradition. Do you think they could ever change the way penalties are done? Like, I know have you ever seen the ones where they run from the halfway line after the keeper?
In America, they look
the America one.
But is there anything that you could think where you go, are penalties redundant anymore? Could you think, is there anything where, anyone listening to this podcast, could they suggest a way to end a match other than penalties, or a variation of penalties that might be different to what is normal?
Well, he tried that golden goal, didn't he? Was that in the World Cup? He tried that.
Is that in extra time golden goal?
Yeah, like the golden goal. He tried that, didn't he? So, and they were hoping that teams were going to come out and try and score, but it actually had the opposite effect, because teams were like, well, I'm not going to try and score, because if they score, it's over. So it had the opposite effect. So I'm not too sure there is a way. I mean, am I a fan of penalties? I don't know. You're just kind of accustomed to it, but I don't really know what other way you could. You could do it.
Like,
it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Some way. Like, I mean, we've got VAR now. I've got goal line technology. We've got all this, the game moving on, and everyone might go, "Shut, Jim, it's the best way." But I'm just thinking, could there be a way? Could someone think of a way where they go, you know what? that might be a little bit better than 5 people taking penalties and then you go sudden death. So.
See, it's weird. You look at it, right? And by the way, on that American, when you said it, the American style running from the halfway line, I would be, as somebody that's played with me, Jim, how bad would I be at them, mate?
You'd be awful.
Absolutely rubbish.
I put you in goal, you that bad.
But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, what do I have the biggest problem with? At this stage of the season, let's be honest, 30 minutes extra time is not ideal. Like that is far from ideal. Yeah. The penalty side of it, it seems a cruel way. It seems a cruel way, particularly if you're looking at Chelsea there, where Liverpool have not been able to score past Chelsea across 2 full games, 2 extra halves, and then all of a sudden you've got your goalkeeper taking a penalty kick to try and decide. It does seem slightly unfair, but at the same time, it is great drama, especially
don't get me wrong, I love watching them, but I wouldn't want to be in one. I'm just thinking out loud. Like I said, I was just thinking out loud. Is there any other way that anyone could come up with that might, work? It's interesting to see if the listeners ever, they've thought of it all.
Did you either of you have a particular routine? Tank, if you missed your only scene, was that your only senior penalty that you missed? What was your routines? Did you have one?
Yeah, smash the arse out of it.
What about your penalty routine, mate?
Well, that was it. I just smashed it. I tried to go into the far corner, left-hand side, and I went dink, dink, turned around. It was like, oh, no.
But
no, I've never took pens.
I was going to say, would you took another one after it, or did it hit you?
Well, no, I wouldn't take another one.
No, I missed a couple, and this is obviously in a 3 people watching. I missed 2 pens in one game, and I can't take them anymore. Can't do it. Head's gone.
No.
Did you change your mind with the second one? Did the keeper get in your head?
I can't remember. I think I went the same way twice. Both me, and it was a nothing game. I think we were winning easy, so it didn't matter. But psychologically, it broke me. That's it. I can't take them now. Like I played an over 35s team, and they're like, "Right, you take the pen." I'm like, I can't.
No, that's why he's looking for an alternative way to win games.
yeah.
Just selfish reasons.
Or what they should do is get 1 to 10, get the teams to list 1 to 10 of the best penalties, and then flip it round so all the rubbish ones go first.
Start first, yeah, a bit of drama. Right, lads, there was another big game, obviously, at the weekend, and Tank, I'll come to you on this one. City versus West Ham. I'm not going to ask you too much on it because you got the times of the game wrong, didn't you?
Yeah, get a WhatsApp. A few says, "Oh, Tank City." I'm like, "What's happening, mate? I'm buying chicken in Marks and Spencer." I actually didn't know they kicked off at Tim. I didn't know they kicked off, mate.
I left you a voice note, didn't I, saying hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I suppose it's one of them when you're looking at this game. I didn't particularly think City would slip up. I think it was probably the one where you're looking at it going, look. I say all of this, with my Liverpool hat on. I do think the league is dead and buried. I don't think City will slip up, but I like that it's kept City honest. We're going to take them to the last game, fingers crossed. But, when you look at City's power of recovery in the second half, you've got to tip your hat to them. West Ham are a decent side. They put them under a good bit of pressure. But City found a way to come and get a result. And albeit for the penalty miss in the last couple of minutes, they probably should have got the result that they were after.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only seen the last 20 odd minutes over it, but we did... It just takes me back to City and Liverpool with the amount of games, Jim, because I think City are decimated at the back. They've got a lot of injuries. Similar, like you're watching the cup final. Liverpool plays. Fabinho was it against Villa. The big players who play game in, game out. The bodies are like saying, "Look, enough's enough here," and it's happening to City with the likes of Diaz and Walker, and they're getting a lot of injuries. And I wasn't surprised when you were saying to me about because West Ham are, they're not a bad side, and I tell you to be licking the lips. And City played this high line, and they've got Fernandinho playing centre half, who's 74 years of age now. Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins would be sitting there going, "I will get chances against Man City." And this is what we had. Where, by the way, we haven't mentioned this, Mr. Cal, where I called the Real Madrid score. I did call it 3. I did call it, and. If you're giving chances up, which City do, don't get me wrong, Liverpool do. But I just think I don't think it's over, this title, Jamie.
Oh, don't you start. You get me all giddy again. Like, I come onto these podcasts and I think the title's done and a couple of words from him and I'm like, hold on, the hope is
Agree,
still
though, to be fair, mate.
I don't,
I'd
mate.
agree.
I don't. You know, Aston Villa caused us big problems, mate. We done well to come away with the win there. They caused big problems. They got in behind our back line. Every time that Villa got the ball, one of the commentators after he said they showed you when Liverpool got battered 7-1 by Villa, everything was just over our back line for Ollie Watkins to run onto. The lad's rapid. Danny Ings is rapid. And Villa's got quality plays. The only thing what lets them down, and I think he's the luckiest boy in football, is Tyrone Mings. You know, the back line is awful at Villa, but they will get chances. They will get chances against Man City with that high line, with possibly two of the quickest centre forwards in the league at the minute. It's not over.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Right, I'm getting giddy now. I've got goosebumps here after that rallying cry throughout the Tank. Jim, before we get obviously your predictions for how the season may pan out, and like Tank was mentioning that potential Villa game. One thing that I come away from that game with City and West Ham, if you have a penalty and there's a minute to go, a penalty at any time, and Kevin De Bruyne is stood on that pitch. Why is Kevin De Bruyne not taking the penalty? I can't. Do you think he's got a bit of the Jimmy Mack syndrome and he doesn't fancy it or what?
No, because I saw a tweet someone saying Kevin De Bruyne is meant to be the best player in the Premier League, and then when it comes to crunch time penalties, he's not taking it, and he went off with a black eye or bruised eye in the Champions League final last year. So, look, I think Riyad Mahrez is the penalty taker. I think you have a designated penalty taker, and he's a designated penalty taker. I think that varies. I think we saw Jesus take one when we went to watch him, but he was on a hat trick. So, from the penalties I've seen Mahrez take, he's normally unbelievable at him. He's very left foot, top bins. He scores under pressure. So, look, these things happen, don't they? I think that's the first one he's missed in the. No, actually, did he miss one against Liverpool?
Yeah, he did.
I think he went top corner. I think he hit it over the bar. Yeah,
he went over. So normally you would say get De Bruyne on it, but designated penalty takers if De Bruyne doesn't fancy it. But I said West Ham could do you a favour. I did say West Ham could do you a favour. I don't think Villa will. I think Al's right, and they'll get chances. And if Fernandinho's playing, then they're always going to have plenty of chances. But I think with City going forward, I think they'll do too much for them. But I honestly agree as well. Last day jitters, lost. Drew midweek, thought they had it wrapped up. It's going to be a good Sunday, mate.
Not for me. Not for me and him. I kind of think if Villa can survive I always think of playing like City first goal bingo. So within the first 10 minutes, City have scored a goal or two. If they can get through that period and look to frustrate a little bit, the ridiculous romantic in me is thinking, Stevie slip all those years ago, and he's
he's not going to want to let City win this league in his back garden, is he? So
it's at the Etihad, isn't it?
Is he at Etihad? Is it?
Yeah,
apologies.
I think so.
Yeah.
Either way, he's not going to want to watch City win the league, is he? So he's going to put a resolute performance. He's going to rile them up to put in a good stern performance and see what happens. I think they'll have too much, but you never know.
Two things to finish on, right? So first one, the last thing is particularly random, and I just want to get your thoughts on it. But this one is for you, Tank. Mark Noble, special mention to him because I think it seems quite rare in this day and age now that you kind of have these kind of one club men, these guys that are at clubs for sustained periods of time. You hear a lot of stories coming out. Not more so than Declan Rice, who has been incredibly complimentary of Noble, the impact he's had around the club on him personally. He seems a really good guy who's pretty much seen it all with that club. What do you make of, I suppose, this kind of one club man thing, and why do you think tenures like that are becoming more of a thing at the past?
Well, I'm Mark Noble. I actually played with him and roomed with him for quite a long time when we were at Hull. When I was on garden leave with Gary Megson of Forest.
Your mate Gary.
Yeah, Peter Taylor was my England under-21 manager, and he took me to Hull. and he signed me on loan at Hull, and a certain young Mark Noble come on loan to Hull as well, and we both stayed at the same hotel. And he's I tell you, he's a credit to himself, because he'll be the first to hold his hands up. Ability wise, he's not like, one of these outstanding ability with technique and all that, but even when he was a young lad at Hull, and I think he must have been 18 or 19 when he come on loan, his training, he was always, he'd work his bollocks off in training, and he'd train how he played, and he's just a complete credit to himself. And to have 18 years?
18,
to have
600 odd appearances.
Anyone who has that amount of time in the top level game, he's a credit to himself, and he's been an outstanding player in service to West Ham. He's come a long way since that young whippersnapper who was in there, used to get me my tea and coffee at Hull.
Jim, why do you think, I suppose, that, you're seeing this less and less now, these type of players, that stay at clubs for so long? Do you think it's just so competitive now that, it's very difficult to kind of last that length of time at one club?
Yeah, there's so many sort of foreign imports coming in on the cheap as well. I mean, from a Mark Noble perspective, if he had the ability of Declan Rice, do you think he would have stayed at West Ham for 16 years? That's a question I would ask. So, is there coincidences or, of things happening? So let's look at the people who've stayed at clubs for a long amount of time. Mark Noble, Stevie Gerrard, Jamie Carragher. Now, the difference you've got there is two people that love the club, but you're winning, so they don't need to go anywhere else. And you got Mark Noble, who's not winning, but maybe isn't good enough to move. So he's a hometown boy, so he stays. That's why I think you don't get it anymore, because it's harder to come through academies and get within a club at a top stage. So, people like Marcus Rashford, he might be a one club player because he's grown up in, unless the club then decide to get rid of him. So I think it's harder to break through and stay. But I think if you do break through, the better players break through at lower clubs, your Dele Allis, your Declan Rices, and they then will move to better because they're too good to be playing where they are now. And although they probably would love to stay there, from a career point of view, I don't think it is about money, and everyone says it's about money because they're going to make money no matter where they go. They want to win things, and that's why I think you just don't get that anymore.
Lads, I'm going to finish on a very random one, and this could go completely and utterly pear-shaped, right? I seen something today online, and it was clearly a Man United fan on a stag do having to wear a Liverpool kit whilst doing the Ronaldo celebration that everyone seems to be doing these days. So my question to you both is, what's the most random or best prank you've seen on a stag do that you've been on? And who wants to go first?
I mean, I'm happy to go first, mate. It's not a prank, but you were there for it, mate.
Go on.
So we were in, so for my stag do, we were in Berlin Tank, and we were in this centre of Berlin. It's called Alexanderplatz, and it's all like, bratwurst, little sheds, very much like Christmas markets. And they were selling bloody gas masks of all things. So, gas mask, and it had an attachment coming off that had a canister, so you can twist the canister off and it just creates sort of a funnel. So the lads bought a gas mask for me, lay me down on a table with the funnel sticking in the air, got 2 steins of beer and started tipping the beer through the funnel. And as it's coming in, the gas mask like tight, so the beer's just coming on my face, and it's just sitting there. It's not escaping. And then they keep pouring it in, and I'm trying to drink it more. Yeah, the beer's just filling up. So I tried to put my hand up to say, "Look, lad, you're waterboarding here. I'm dying. Yeah, I'm dying." So when when your mates see you dying, what do? Just chuck all of it in, and there's like eye holes, so you can just see on the eye hole the beer filling up on the eye hole, and then I had to whip it off, and I said I was dying. I was literally dead.
I can absolutely vouch that that is exactly what happened, and we can maybe if Jimmy gives us the approval, post a video.
Send in the video, mate. Yeah, get it on. But wait, the funny thing was, it was an old woman watching who wanted to go.
She did, yeah.
She was like, "I want to go." Like,
for
she wanted the gas mask on and wanted to get on the table and be waterboarded. God help her husband.
What about you, Tag?
Yeah, mine's revolving around my old teammate Andy Johnson. It was actually my stag do. I mean, the lad was absolutely. You've heard some of my podcasts with him, Jay, where we spoke about him. He's a one-off. Let's just say that.
Are you still in touch with him now?
I speak to him now and then. Yeah, I spoke to him about 6 months ago. He's put it this way: if he was
not
playing,
been locked up yet.
If he was playing in today's game, he'd be regularly in jail, because I mean he was just off the charts. So I've got, like, on my stag do, we just gets to the airport and everyone's waiting, and Jono's on the plane drinking, trying to get as many trying to get as many beers as he can, and like he'd been drinking 2 days before, because we're going on the stag do. We said we'll all come to Liverpool. I owned a couple of pubs in Liverpool, so we'll have a few beers there. So lo and behold, we're flying out on a Friday, and Jono turned up in Liverpool Wednesday, and you're like, right, we're meeting Friday, and he's like, yeah, like, let's go for a pint now. I'm like, it's Wednesday. So he's in Liverpool, and we're trying. So anyway, cut a long story short, he's absolutely obliterated getting on the plane. How we got on the plane, we don't know. So we're all waiting there, getting our cases off the belts, what comes round.
Yeah, the conveyor.
So yeah, like my uncle and my dad are there. They're the sensible ones, and like there's Dave Bessent and all of them, Nigel Jensen. There's quite a few, Mark Crossley and all that. There's quite a few lads there. So like, John, we can't find Jono anywhere at all. So next minute the alarm starts going off in the airport, and we're like, it's Jono. So Jono comes round on the belt like that, with the suitcases, and he comes in, and you can see all the fellas outside who's throwing the cases on. Honestly, so he's caused absolute chaos.
How's he got onto that? Has he gone outside to get on it, or what?
No one knows, mate, because like he's just me. Our fella's like, where is he? And I'm like, he's there, he's all right. And then next minute, we're all looking for him. We're all waiting our cases, waiting to get on the bus. Can't find John, and then you hear woo, and then here he's lying down like that, flat,
like the Undertaker.
Listen, some of the stuff what he done during the stag do is he refused to get a wash, refused to brush his teeth. Refused, and then he's coming out and like, and then he was standing. Nigel Jensen hates all stuff like that. So the whole stag do, he's standing next to Gemmo, and like Jono's got long hair, and he's a good-looking boy, like back in the day as well. He's got long hair, like, and it's greasy. It's got everything, food in it, because he'd have food like rubber in his hair, and he was big God. Shit. His breath was, and he'd just stand next to Gemmo and just be burping in his face, and honestly,
no.
But I can't tell most of the stuff what went on in that stag do with Jono, but
it was good.
Yeah,
it was good crack anyway.
It was good. It was good. Oh, he went the Isle of Man as well, by the way. It was unbelievable.
You won't be allowed back.
Yeah,
no.
Wanted pictures up.
I love it. Right, lads, that's enough from us. Tank, Jim, a pleasure as always.
Cheers, boys.
Been a pleasure, boys.
Good stuff, right? Everybody, thank you as always for all the feedback that you've been sending us. It's great to see that we've got so many new listeners coming through. If you don't mind, I know I say this each week, but if you don't mind just leaving us a little review wherever you get your podcasts, or a rating, it'll just help spread the word of the podcast. We are also putting videos out on YouTube, so if you fancy giving us a watch on there, you can see Jimmy's great looking tan. He's looking fantastic. Looking.
Tank, you got the whitest teeth in podcasting history.
I know, yeah.
You're not wrong, mate.
But yeah, give us a check out on YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already. With that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Look after yourselves, and we'll be back with you next week on the Boot Room podcast. All the best.